When I first stepped through the rusted iron gate of the college, my heart was heavier than my bag. Other students walked past me laughing, talking about hostels, books, and new beginnings. I walked silently, counting the few coins in my pocket and wondering how long I could survive in a place that demanded money at every step when I barely had enough to eat. I did not have college fees. What I had was a dream, stubborn and burning, and a fear that never left me. I came from a small town where dreams were considered luxuries. My father was a daily wage labourer, and my mother stitched clothes for neighbours to add a little extra income. Some days there was enough food. Some days there was only tea and hope. Education, for people like us, was not a path, it was a gamble. When I passed my high school exams with good marks, everyone congratulated me. But behind their smiles was the same question: what next? College meant fees, books, transport, and time, things we didn't have. Relatives advised me to learn a skill or start working. Dreams don't fill empty stomachs, one uncle said kindly, as if he were doing me a favour by crushing mine early. But I couldn't let go. I had seen what a life without education looked like: endless work, little respect, and no escape. I didn't want to live trapped by circumstances I never chose. The day I told my parents I wanted to go to college, my mother cried. Not because she didn't believe in me, but because she knew how hard it would be. My father stayed silent for a long time, then said, "If you are ready to suffer, we will try." That was his way of giving me permission to dream. Trying was not easy. We borrowed money for the admission form. I sold my old phone to buy my first set of textbooks. On the day I paid the initial college fees, my hand shook as I counted the notes. That money represented months of my father's labour and my mother's tired eyes bent over cloth at night. From the first week itself, I realised how different my life was from others. Many students came on bikes or cars. I walked miles every day to save transport money. When they went to cafes, I sat in the library, not because I was studious, but because it was the only place where I didn't have to spend money. Hunger became my constant companion. I learned how to study on an empty stomach, how to ignore the smell of food from the canteen, how to tell my friends I wasn't hungry when my body screamed otherwise. Sometimes I would drink water and pretend it was enough. There were days when shame hurt more than hunger. When teachers announced fee deadlines, my heart would race. I avoided eye contact, afraid my name would be called. Once, a clerk spoke loudly. "Pay your dues or you won't be allowed to sit in." Exams, the entire office went silent. I felt small, exposed, and humiliated. That night, I thought of quitting. I sat on the floor of our small room, books spread around me, and cried silently. I wondered if my uncle had been right. Maybe dreams really were for the rich. Maybe I was being selfish, forcing my family to suffer for my ambition. But then I looked at my father's hands, cracked, rough, and permanently stained with dust. I remembered my mother stitching late into the night, even when her fingers hurt. If they could endure so much for me, how could I give up so easily? The next day, I started looking for work. Balancing college and work was like walking on a rope. I worked part-time at a small shop in the evenings, sometimes until late at night. I cleaned shelves, managed customers, and did whatever was asked without complaint. The pay was small, but every coin mattered. My days became exhausting. College in the morning, work in the evening, studying at night. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. There were times I nodded off during lectures, my head heavy with fatigue. Some teachers misunderstood my tiredness as laziness. Only a few saw the struggle behind my silence. One professor changed everything. She noticed I always stayed back after class, not to ask questions, but to copy notes because I couldn't afford reference books. One day she asked me why. My voice trembled as I told her the truth. I expected pity. Instead, she gave me respect. She helped me apply for a small scholarship and allowed me to use her old books. It wasn't charity, it was belief. For the first time, someone outside my family believed I deserved to be there. The scholarship didn't solve all my problems, but it gave me breathing space. I could pay part of my fees and reduce my working hours slightly. More importantly, it gave me confidence. I started participating in class, studying harder, and dreaming bigger. Still, the struggle never fully disappeared. There were semesters when I didn't know how the fees would be paid. Until the last moment. There were nights when I studied under dim light because electricity had been cut. There were moments of deep loneliness, watching others enjoy freedoms I couldn't imagine. But with every hardship, my determination grew stronger. I learned the true value of time because every minute mattered. I learned discipline because there was no room for excuses. I learned humility because life had humbled me early. And I learned gratitude for small meals, for borrowed books, for kind words that kept me going. The day I sat for my final exams, I felt something close to peace. No matter the result, I had survived. I had fought battles no one saw and stayed standing. When the results came and I passed with good grades, my mother held the paper as if it were gold. My father smiled quietly, his eyes shining with pride. Graduation day was simple. No fancy clothes, no big celebration. But as I stood there holding my degree, I felt rich in a way money could never buy. That piece of paper carried the weight of hunger, tears, sleepless nights, and unbroken hope. Today, when I look back, I don't remember the pain with bitterness. I remember it with gratitude. Studying with great difficulty taught me lessons no classroom ever could. It taught me that education is not just about books, it's about resilience. Not about comfort, but courage. I still don't have everything I want. Life is still a struggle in many ways. But now I know something unshakable. Circumstances can slow you down, but they cannot stop you if your will is stronger than your fear. I went to college without fees, without comfort, and without certainty. What I had was belief borrowed at first from my parents, then from a teacher, and finally from myself. And that belief changed my life.